Okay, everyone, we're going to get back to the program now. We are going to stay with India. As President Lim mentioned in his very enthusiastic remarks about the Indian market, I actually largely agree. UFI members for years have been complaining about the lack of suitable space both in Delhi and Mumbai. And now finally we're seeing some progress in terms of new capacity being, really significant capacity being added in India. So I don't think you'll find any of UFI's members complaining about too much space in India. They'll welcome anything that's added. So our next speaker is Sonia Prashar. She's the Managing Director of Messe Nuremberg, India, and she's going to share the opportunities and the risks that she sees in India. And I do think that India stands out within Asia as one of the most exciting opportunities for the exhibition industry. So Sonia, please join me on stage.
So, Annyeong Khaseo. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must say it was my honor and privilege to be invited to the beautiful city of Seoul for the very first time for the 15th edition of Asia XCon by Akai. I landed yesterday. It did remind me a little bit of Delhi, looking at the dust, but I would say the future is bright here. So I am today going to talk about opportunities and risks in India. I think Mr. Lim has left, but I would like to keep up the enthusiasm he has for India. So even though the story is not so easy, but at the same time, they say patience is a virtue you must bring when you come to India. So this is something which you must all keep in mind when you come to India. Before I dive into what India has to offer, I think it's my duty to mention that Korea has been a very important and strategic partner for India for years. Since the signing of CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between the two countries in 2010, there has been a significant uprise in the momentum in terms of bilateral trade between the two countries. In 2017-18, the bilateral trade recorded a volume of nearly $20 billion US. And the vision of the two countries is to reach $50 billion US in another 20 years, which I think is again, a ray of optimism. But if you look at Korean products in the Indian households, every house in India has some or the other Korean product. So whether it is your household items, whether it's your cars or your gadgets or your technology, I think that already speaks of the volume of cooperation between India and Korea. And if you look at exports from Korea into India, that again has grown up significantly. So from $10.46 billion in 2010-11, it has jumped up to $16.36 billion in 2017-18, has been a significant growth as well. So I think Mr. Lim's team is already doing a great job. They are very aggressive at the moment, even though the venue still has to come into execution, into reality. They are meeting each and every industry association. If I come back to the question which was raised, how do you see the future? I think the future is great because your teams are really doing a great job in India. So congratulations to that. Since India is a long and complex story, I wouldn't say complicated, but definitely complex, I need these papers to talk about this long story. So today, India is one of the 3 largest economies in the world and jumping up to number 7, or one of the 7 fastest growing major economies in the world as well. So in today's presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of various opportunities and risks of investing in India more from a practitioner's perspective. So to give you a perspective of how far we have come, I would like to share facts about economy. And there are various sectors which are upcoming and booming, but I'm going to today focus only on 6 major important sectors to start with. So let's start with the IT and BPM. IT and business process management sector. India is the world's largest BPM destination, and today India has 56% share of the global outsourcing market. Plus, our e-commerce segment is growing at 19%, driven a lot by domestic activity and partly driven by startups. I think Mr. Lim mentioned also about startups. This is the new buzzword in India, and every business is technically a startup, but if you look at young startups in India today, the number is absolutely amazing. All things considered, in the India IT and the BPM industry is estimated to reach US $350 billion by 2025. The second very promising sector is telecom. The next segment in focus is telecom, where India is already the world's second largest mobile market. In fact, our smartphone user base has crossed 300 million, making us a key player in the segment alone. And with a subscriber base of 1.2 billion, India is the second largest in the world. In addition, the number of internet users has reached already 829 million will be reaching in another 2 years, so which is already, again, a significant number. Then automobile sector, where obviously the Korean industry is also very successful in the Indian market. So the automobile sector, India is the world's 4th largest vehicle market. Today, over 25 million vehicles are being produced in India, with the country being the world's largest manufacturers of tractors, two-wheelers, and three-wheelers. And to facilitate the investment in this growing sector, the government offers 100% foreign direct investment under the automatic route. So automotive, if you look at, again, as I said, the Korean industry, I think they're already making a great foray in the Indian market. And if you look at Hyundai, I mean, I was driving a Hyundai, and I would say I was very, very successful. And then I had to show my loyalty to the Germans and picked up a Volkswagen. So I would say that there's a promising sector in the automotive field as well for the Korean companies. The next sector is pharmaceuticals. Again, India is the 3rd largest pharma industry in the world by volume. Currently, we have about 20% share of the generics medicine exports share, and also a 21% share of patented drugs revenue share. And again, the government is now offering 100% FDI under the automatic route for the greenfield pharma. Another very important sector is food processing. India is the largest producer of consumer and exporter of spices. Yesterday, I tried some Korean cuisine as well. I would say spices are doing a good job from India. Really nice food, but a lot of spices in it, and fantastic, absolutely. So in addition, we are also the leading country amongst the world's milk-producing nations. And the country is world's 2nd largest producer of food grains, fruits, and vegetables. Overall, the sector is very attractive, while the Indian food and retail market estimated to reach about US $482 billion by, again, 2020. So we're talking of the next year. And again, to facilitate investment, the government is again offering 100% FDI in the sector. And finally, the renewable energy, which is also a key focus for both the Indian government as well as the investors. India has the world's largest renewable energy expansion plan. The country already has the 5th largest installed capacity of renewable energy in the world. And again, the government is allowing 100% FDI into this sector, again, via the automatic route and keeping in mind the various provisions. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are various booming sectors, but I just picked up the top 6 sectors where there is a chance further for the Korean companies to come and invest and to also look at some export-oriented products. So there are roughly about 600 Korean companies present in India, but today I learned from the embassy, the Indian embassy in Korea, that the figure has already crossed, and we are roughly about 650 Korean companies. And if I look at the future, I think it looks bright. And if I only were to compare the exports from Germany into India, I think Korea is doing a better job, even though I also represent the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. And if I look at the German companies in India, we are about 1,000 German companies, 1,000 100% subsidiaries. And if I were to look at the volume of the business, the exports, especially from Germany into India, we are touching roughly about $10 billion. And I look at Korea, we are already crossing 16 billion US dollars. So I think that's a good news for the Korean products into the Indian market. So now, first the opportunities before I come to the risks. I think every country, every developing nation brings along its risks as well. But first we talk of the positives. So from the previous slides, it's already evident that the country has seen a phenomenal growth over the past decade. And we will look at the different elements that are making India today an attractive investment opportunity. To begin with, the Indian economy has grown considerably over the past decade, with the economy pegged at about US dollars 2.8 trillion as per World Bank estimates. Even though we are behind some important countries, but I think at the moment what is being estimated about the economy, we are quite positive. Then the growth of economy has been a consistent driven by a mix of internal as well as external factors. Part of the growth is due to the implementation of the recent policies such as nationwide goods and services tax, which came into implementation about 3 years back. And as one of the world's fastest growing economies, accounting for about 15% of the global growth, India's economy has actually helped to lift, is actually not help, it is helping millions out of poverty as well. I would be talking now of some key economic drivers of the economic growth in the following slides. So, most important is this huge growing consumer market. A key contributor to India's economic growth is its growing middle class. And the segment of the country now includes carpenters, decorators, drivers, laborers, and amongst others. The sheer size of the middle class has doubled from 300 million in 2004 to 600 million in 2012, as per the study from the World Economic Forum. And this is likely to make half the country's population part of the middle class. In fact, the number of households with a disposable income of more than 10,000 US dollars has actually leapt from around 2.5 million in 1990 to nearly 50 million in 2015, as per the latest surveys. India pips China in FDI inflows for the first time in 20 years. We are definitely not China. Now, when we have visiting delegations coming to India and saying, okay, if you say that there are certain risks and it is a complex country and a bit of complications as well, why should we come to India? I mean, we've done China, but what is so special in India? The first answer is there's still a lot to be done in India. We still have to accomplish a lot in India. When Mr. Lim was talking about venues, yes, there was a huge scope available there, but we were struggling to have a proper exhibition ground to start with. So you can imagine how delayed we were if we were to compare ourselves with China. So since there is a lot to be done still in India, I think it's important that you are participating in this growth story, in this development story, and there's a future for everybody. So India has shown that the right structural reforms and the strong macroeconomic stability can be pivotal for a country in improving its investment climate. And attractive economic growth, coupled with a larger consumer base, has encouraged the FDI investment. Moreover, the Indian government in recent years has opened up the economy, introducing a new investor-friendly policies, making it easier for the international players to invest in India. In addition to the FDIs, the government has also initiated several policies to increase the ease of doing business in India. Now, initiatives like consolidation of multiple application forms and introduction of goods and services tax have helped the foreign investors to make their process of investment into India a little bit easier. I wouldn't say it's still very easy, but we are in progress. Getting electricity is also faster and cheaper, and other reforms include strengthening access to credit and making it easier for the taxpayers to pay taxes. But if you were to just look at the population of India paying taxes, we are just about 1%. So imagine if we had all taxpayers of 1.3 billion, what would happen to this country? Ayushman Bharat, this is health cover for all. Forward-looking initiatives like free health care for the poorest citizens will play a key role in strengthening and underlying pillars of economic growth. As per this plan, 100 million lowest income families will be provided just 500,000 rupees, which is roughly about $7,000, a sizable sum in India, in annual health insurance to treat serious ailments. A closer look at the smart cities projects. Another key driver for the long-term economic growth is infrastructure investments. And taking the examples of the Smart Cities initiative by the Indian government, today about 100 cities in India have benefited from the Smart City initiative, where the government has actually focused on energy, on improving essential elements like water, electricity, waste management. Waste management is another very important topic for the Indian market, and etc., through various investment, public and private partnerships and other drives, including e-governance. So look at the initiatives of converting 100 cities in India into smart cities. Again, there's a lot which the Korean companies can play an important role in developing these 100 cities. I think Mr. Lim also talked about Make in India. He covered most of my presentation as well, I think, but I like to keep his enthusiasm for the Indian market. So, as some of you might be aware, that the services sector especially is the largest contributors to India GDP, accounting to about 54% of the country's TVA. And the government is actually focusing on Make in India initiatives to increase the manufacturing sector contribution from 16% of the GDP to 25%. Since most important sector is the services sector, which is actually contributing to the GDP, but there is a lot which can be done in the manufacturing sector as well, and that is why Make in India. Now foreign investors come and ask, are you trying to say do everything and manufacture in India? We say manufacture not just for India, but for the world as well. So we are basically asking you to come and collaborate there. And if you look at the Korean companies, whether it is LG, whether it is Hyundai or Samsung, I think they all have been present for more than 20 years in India. And how they are participating in the Make in India initiative, it's a win-win story both for the Indian economy as well as the Korean companies' success story in India as well. Some very important policy issues which have been initiated by the government in the last 5 years especially is resolution of insolvency. Now, this new law actually makes a commitment to deal swiftly with failing companies and removing the owners and blocking them from trying to buy back the business out of. I mean, there were a lot of companies which were facing issues with the existing laws, as a result of which the government actually came forward to get rid of some complications and come up with a proper strategy on insolvency. And this, I would say, has actually strengthened also the Indian economy, as well as at the same time helped in making the ease of doing business in India a little bit stronger. Then the recapitalization of banks and reforms. The government has announced a major recapitalization drive in October 2017 by using 3 channels: the budget, the market borrowings, and the issue of capitalization bonds. And this is also actually helping and rejuvenating the banking sector, which also needed a lot of boost. You've all heard about demonetization, which took place about 3 years back. And this was also actually to boost and strengthen the banking sector as well. Of course, we talked about bringing all sorts of black money back into the banks, but to be honest, demonetization really helped us in improving the banking sector as well. Then the digital governance. Digital India, another initiative by the Indian government in the last 5 years, is also very, very important. And it has actually hosted technology-driven projects in areas including budgeting, depositing of fees, penalties, amongst others. This is also important for ease of doing business in India because foreign companies especially were struggling with payment of taxes. And they were going from door to door in achieving what they had to achieve with the complexities of the taxation structure. But with the Digital India, this is another initiative which has made doing business in India a little bit easier. So this is just the beginning of Big Bang for India. This is what Mr. Son, the founder and CEO of SoftBank, has to say. But as I mentioned, you all have to come with a bit of patience when you come to the Indian market. That's a virtue you have to carry. So while the ease of doing business in India has improved, but we still have to resolve some issues. So we jumped about 23 places on the World Bank's Doing Business Index, which was very, very good news, and we made a big advertisement out of it. However, we still have to go a long way to meet the aspirations of the society. Especially the society is young, and it's also very, very aspirational. So to meet the aspirations of this young society is also going to be a challenge for the Indian government as well as the Indian economy. Again, ranking on doing business in India, we have again improved quite a few positions. And I've covered all the topics earlier, resolving insolvency, contracts, trading across borders, paying taxes. Really, paying taxes was a major issue for the foreign investors. The complex structure has been made a little easier, but the tax structure is still complicated for us. Other issues would be the changing political policies. We had the privilege of having a stable government for the last 5 years, and Modi government brought back India shining. But we will have our elections in the month of April, May this year, and it will be very important for us to have a stable government, hopefully. But in case of changing governments, there will be change in the political policies as well. And this is one threat or a risk, I would say, which is going to basically decide the future policy. But there's another important fact. Would India stop growing if there was a change in the political scene? This is a question which is asked often to us by foreign investors. We say India is in a phase where it has to grow. There is absolutely no stopping back. So it has to grow automatically at the moment, the phase which India is in. As I said, there's still a lot to be done there and achieved there. So more than 50% growth in any case will happen. And the balance 50% will be complemented by favorable political, governmental, industrial policies by the government, whosoever comes into action. Modi has done a great job. His government has done a great job in the last 5 years. And I would say, yeah, the future is good, but we are also a complicated and a complex democracy. So we have to see, you have to perform to be able to come into action. And that is something which is a challenge of this country as well. It creates an opportunity, but at the same time, that's what you could compare with China, for example. You know, I mean, democracy is going to does play a very, very important role. Second is this multicultural community. If you look at India, right from north to down south, east and west, we are absolutely a complex society, talking in terms of languages, talking in terms of religions, talking in terms of traditions. So to deal with such a large country with a complex multicultural diversity is also not easy. So what comes into action when you are dealing with such a society and bringing in policies, you have to keep in mind how are you going to deal with it. This GST, for example, also made us get rid of the various state tax structures. So when GST came into picture, it actually stabilized the goods and services tax all over the country. So, which has become easier because if you move from one state to the other, the tax structure completely changed. And then you had to fill in a lot of other further documentations as well. So I think this is the first initiative and a very, very strong initiative by the government. And they are trying to improve each day on this tax structure as well. And this will help the foreign investors to make a further success story. Upgrading and upskilling of workforce. This is a very important sector for us. We have a huge amount of youth. We have a huge amount of population. But in case we do not have them as skilled, then we are again going to have a major issue as well. So skilling in the workforce is a need of the hour. If you look at most of the international players, they are investing a lot of money at the moment in the skilling of their workforce as well. And this is where most of the international players are playing an important role. But for the first time, we also have a skilling ministry under the government of India, which is working very closely with the industry to make sure that we have skilled workforce available in the Indian industry. India is a land of opportunity. I wouldn't say missed opportunity, but definitely a land of opportunity. But investors need expert advice, proper preparation, and I repeat the word again, patience, to succeed. Most of the large companies, again, looking at Korean companies as well, have been fairly successful in the Indian market, but when it comes to SMEs, small and medium-sized companies, I would say, and that is applicable when we are actually advising the German companies as well, that the future is there, definitely there. There is an opportunity, an immense amount of opportunity in the infrastructure sector, in the pharmaceutical sector, in the skilling sector, in the education sector. But at the same time, you need to find the right partners when you're entering the Indian market. So if you have state promotion agencies, your government bodies, you need to work very closely with them when you are looking at the Indian market. So the way forward, we talked about some opportunities and risks. Again, I'm referring to Mr. Lim because I was really impressed by his presentation. We both are talking about trade shows. Trade shows are a great way to exhibit the goods and services of a specific industry to the potential buyers and businesses. And this service is definitely needed in the rapidly growing economy. So when we are coming up with more exhibition spaces in the country, we are actually inviting more and more trade fair organizers, industry associations, to use the medium of trade fairs as the first tool of test marketing their products in India. And I think this is I mean, not just to advertise what we are talking, because we are all from the trade fair industry, not because we are all from the trade fair industry, but actually the fact remains this is the best tool for each and every small, medium-sized company who likes to venture into a new market, that they do look at the tool of trade fairs as the first medium or the first tool to test market, whether the product is apt for the Indian market or whether it is too expensive, or can I have a joint venture partner, etc., etc. So if you look at the world and the Indian exhibition industry, we are still very, very small. We're just about 3.3 billion industry size. But if you look at the number of exhibition organizers, I mean, we have roughly about more than, I would say, 500, but 750 national and international business exhibitions every year. So when you look at not just the metros, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, but you also look at tier 2 cities and even regional. There are trade fair organizers, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs who are doing exhibition, actual real exhibitions, and we have about 750 exhibitions happening per year in India. And putting an employment of about 118,000, which is a very small number if you were to looking at the population of India. So there's a further scope. And majorly we were lacking because there was no right venue. So most of the exhibitions were taking place in Delhi, in this old venue by the government, which was Pragati Maidan. And then the industry associations in India came up and became strong to say, hey, we want to make another exhibition ground. So Indian Machine Tool Manufacturers Association, which is a very strong industry body in India, came up with their own venue in Bangalore, which is roughly about 80,000 square meters. And then it was the Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts, who also said we need a venue. That's also roughly about 75,000 square meters. Pragati Maidan was growing old and needed definitely major upliftment. And I think ICC is coming at the right time to the Indian market, where we still need more exhibition space to cater to the demands of the international organizers, industry associations, to do proper professional exhibitions. Even if you saw Modi's picture, we did our inauguration in a tent, in a temporary structure. So we need proper convention halls, and I think the Korean Kintex is going to do in India is going to be a win-win story for both the economies. We are still a little unorganized sector when it comes to exhibitions, but these 750 events are actually registered with the Indian Exhibition Industry Association. And if you look at the international organizers, they're covering roughly about 24%. The majority is domestic organizers. And when I say domestic organizers, it is mainly the industry associations who are actually organizing shows for their members. And in terms of space, we are covering about 7.3 million square meter of gross area and about 3.4 million square meter of net area. And most of the exhibitions are actually taking place either in the north or the western region. When we talk of western region, especially Maharashtra, in Mumbai we have an old exhibition ground, which also needs a major upliftment. But having a great venue in the north of India is actually going to look after the demand of the growing exhibition market. If you look at sector split, it again represents the economic focus in terms of the exhibitions which are taking. It's a very, very minute, detailed division of the various sectors which are being covered in the exhibition industry. Building and construction, of course, this is also one of the important sectors for the Indian economy in terms of infrastructure. Chemicals, electrical, and tourism is a small, and aerospace, defense, and automotive. So the growth drivers for the expo industry in India, of course, would be the government promotion. The government is also playing a very, very important role right now in the expo industry with their Make in India, Skill India, Clean India, Smart Cities. So you have various exhibitions happening at the moment in the Indian industry exhibition industry covering all these sectors. Then the emerging sectors we already covered. So renewables, chemicals, logistics, food processing are also promoted via events. And the new infrastructures. So Dwarka, which is the IEC, the Reliance, and Hitex, which is a small exhibition center but will be growing their facilities. Hyderabad is another important city in the south of India, which is majorly focusing on the IT and the pharmaceutical sector. Yeah, again, the governmental FDI policies are again influencing positively our exhibition industry as well. So if you look at the growth rates of the expo industry in India, we are growing with 8.8%, which is close to our growing GDP as well, growth rates. So the key trends which most of the exhibition organizers are observing or are looking at in the coming years, first of all, shift from general interest to specialized exhibitions. If you look at the Indian exhibition industry in the last few years, then we had a lot of general shows, big chemical shows, big automotive shows. But if you now look at the Indian expo industry, you will see that those big general shows are dwindling and are moving away. And the specialized sectors, I mean, if you talk of chemicals, something on the coating industry, or something of chemical process technology in the food sector. So there are specialized shows which are coming up, and there is there's a trend, and most of the organizers are observing that and are actually moving from general exhibitions to very specialized events. Emphasis on quality of participants. It's also important that we are getting the right people who are ready for the Indian market. Just to collect international participation to come to our shows and say, hey, it's an interesting market, please come to India, is also not the right strategy, because the organizers have to be very much aware, is the product from the international company right for the Indian market, both from price and technology perspective as well. Then the industry consolidation, of course, the international brands. I would say most of the German trade fair organizers, rather all of them, are present in the Indian market. And leading the Indian exhibition market today is definitely UBM. They're doing a great job. And Messe Frankfurt is also another second largest international player in the Indian market. And then come the others. And also the industry associations, if you talk of all Indian industry associations, they're also occupying 50% of the exhibition market in the Indian industry here. Introduction of global events. Various world congresses and world events are now coming to India. So just about 2 years back, we had the World Organic Congress coming to India. Then we have the World Assembly of Ayurveda and Naturopathy coming to India. So there's a Medical World Conference coming to India. So there are various global events which are also coming to the Indian market, as a result of which it's amalgamation of the entire industry in India. And rise of international participation, both from the visitors and exhibitors' perspective. And these are the 4 key trends, or 5 key trends, which are actually going to be monitoring and steering the Indian exhibition industry in the coming years. I am also on the board of the Indian Exhibition Industry Association, and it is an initiative by the venue organizers, the exhibition organizers, and the service providers. It's one organization which is also holding an annual event, and it is the voice of the Indian exhibition industry presenting to the government. And it is also creating a development for networking, exchanging ideas. I think some of you have been attending our programs from Korea. I think they were last year in Hyderabad. And the kind of development which is happening in terms of exchange of ideas is impressive. So the initiatives of the Indian Exhibition Industry Association is training. So we are doing with IAEE. David is aware of the same. We're doing some SEM programs, educating the industry with further trainings and programs. We do an open program, as well as there's an IA Connect, because India is a large market, so we're not just concentrating on the metros, but also going to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, meeting entrepreneurs, trade fair organizers from these cities, and actually educating them of how to hold exhibitions and how to interact with international organizers and forums. I just wanted to give you a very brief example of Nürnberg Messe India. Now, Nürnberg Messe is also one of the 15 top companies, trade fair companies in India. But when you look at Germany, we're still not right on top 7 or so. But if you were to look at India, we did a significant growth in the last 6 years. We're going to complete our 6 years. We were relatively the youngest player or the youngest kid on the block, so to say. But I think that was an example, a best practice, which I wanted to bring to all of you in case you would like to enter the Indian market. Most important for us was to find out a local partner who had the expertise, who had the best practices to offer, and who had also the staff to offer to run the business. So we collaborated with the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, which was initially representing all German trade fair companies, to work very closely with them to set up the office with a very, very lean structure and bring events into India. So in 1990, we were represented by the Chamber, bringing Indian exhibitors and visitors to Nuremberg. And we even started doing events in India even before establishing a subsidiary with local partners. But in 2013, we formed the company, which is nearly 6 years back. And if I look at other companies, as I said, we are relatively new. But if we were to look at the revenue which is generated by Nürnberg Messe in India today, we are the top 3. So when I talked of UBM and Messe Frankfurt India, I would include Messe Nürnberg India as well in terms of the revenue generated. But in the process, we also acquired some very important events, especially the biggest acquisition which we did last year was on the woodworking shows, a woodworking machinery event, and we acquired 3 events. And we also looked at topics which were not right from the portfolio of Germany or Nürnberg Messe. We looked at topics which had a promising future in the Indian market, topic like broadcasting technology, the entertainment industry in India. I mean, you can imagine the Bollywoods and the Tollywoods and the Collywoods. So we make about 1,000 movies in India per year. So the entertainment industry is absolutely at an exponential growth rate. So we looked at topics which are not just coming straight from the portfolio of Nürnberg Messe into India, but we also looked at topics which had a promising future in India. So we did some acquisition, we had some organic growths, we developed some events right from the beginning. And today we have a portfolio of about 15 shows happening all over the country. But most important was that we picked up, our topics are very, very niche. So when I talked about trends from general shows into very specialized shows, and Alucast is an aluminium pressure die casting event which is catering to the automotive industry for light vehicles. So there, the die casters are coming, as well as the tool manufacturers and the allied industry. I mean, this is a very specific engineered topic. But when you look at, it's a great success. Refrigeration and cold chain. This is, again, a very important topic for the Indian market. And so we picked up some natural organic growth events. We started some events right from the scratch, and we picked up some topics via acquisitions. So we have about 15 shows over a period of 6 years. We've got about 40 people spread in 3 locations, Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, and working very closely with our headquarters. And most important was, of course, patience, but at the same time, the right strategy, the right topics, the right people, and the right local partners, which should be your so-called the rule and mantra for the Indian market as well. Yeah, I think but that's the motto or the mantra of every trade fair organizer who comes to the any new market, and basically to make success and foray into the Indian market. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you're most welcome to.
Sonia, great job. Thank you very much. I had one question that occurred to me when you were talking about all the changes in the venue capacity. What do you think the outlook for the exhibition market in Mumbai and Bangalore will be with all the extra capacity and refurbished capacity being added in Delhi?
Yeah. The mentality of the Indian exhibition industry and the topics was, where are your visitors based? Are your visitors based in the western region or in the southern region? So first, people brought their topics into markets or areas or regions where there were exhibitors. Then they started becoming wiser to say, I want to bring my show where my visitors are.
Yeah.
And now, some of the brands have become brands. So it is not important that they should be taking place either in Mumbai or in Delhi.
So you think they can move relatively easily?
They can move around. So nobody could ever imagine CPHI from UBM, which is a great success, being held for years in Mumbai, which doesn't have a proper exhibition ground, and they were struggling of splitting the show into 2 locations, putting tents and hangars, realized a brand is a brand. And we've created a niche brand name. So we could move to Delhi as well. So they moved to Greater Noida in the suburbs of Delhi.
Yeah.
And I would say...
And they didn't suffer any loss in terms of exhibitors or visitors following them?
The visitor numbers could have dipped a little bit because the venue was getting strategically so-called located. But at the same time, the quality of visitors increased tremendously. And I think that is also going to be important as a future trend for exhibitions in India. You look at 1.3 billion people and say, okay, visitor numbers, not an issue. But actually, visitor numbers is an issue for every developing market as well, because traveling in India is getting very expensive. Air flights are getting very expensive. Hotels are getting very expensive. So you really have to see that you come up with all the facilities. So when Kintex is talking of bringing a hotel, bringing a metro, bringing a lot of infrastructure around it, I think that's the way it's going to be. So in terms of capacities more than what we require, I'm optimistic. I'm not looking at it. So even when Mr. Lim was talking of 20% capacity, I think he's also on the right track by expecting that we will have 50% capacity.
Right.
So
you think that the center of gravity in terms of where exhibitions are, it could move away from Mumbai if nothing is done in terms of revamping BEC or adding capacity there?
Absolutely, it will, because they will also have to put the act together proper.
Right.
Because people are not coming and investing in infrastructure rather than investing in visitor numbers. Because you're only trying to create a nice conference hall rather than investing in bringing the right visitors or hosted buyers, for example. So the gravity definitely is going to change. In terms of capacity, I think we're quite good.
Fantastic. Any questions for Sonia? Going once, twice? Sonia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job. You stay up. We'll just do a quick photo. Maybe here we can just put those down there. Great. Thank you.